Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Veil, a show that provides insight into the world of weddings. I'm your host, Keith Willard. Welcome back to the show. Today's episode is unusual because normally it is guest focused, but a couple of weeks ago, I had a wedding, and I'm actually not going to talk too much about the vendor or the wedding that I was involved with. But let's just say that one of the vendors was very specific about vendor meals and about whether or not to have vendor meals and when they were going to be served. Now, as a wedding planner, I always try to make sure that the vendors are fed. But I posted about it on Facebook, and the response was crazy. Over 122 comments just on this topic alone about vendor meals. So we are going to dive deep. But to help me dive deep, I'm going to introduce Marcy Gutenberg with an affair to remember by Marcy. Hi, Marcy.
Hello.
Oh my God, crazy. And look, Brooke Logan Stoner. Oh my goodness, we got the whole crew with us. What?
On time today. Hi, Marcy.
I know.
I look like a swamp witch because my hair's wet, but I'm ready. I'm on time.
But think about this, guys. Who would have ever thought that vendor meals would be the thing that everybody goes crazy over?
Hot button, tell you. I was like, I saw that online and I'm like, oh my God, this thread is blowing up.
It's really, really crazy. I'm just really shocked at the response that people had over the vendor meals. Now, for people that are out there that are just tuning in, a vendor meal basically means, if you're on the bride side, a vendor meal basically means that you're going to provide some type of food and beverage to your vendors to eat during the event. So that way they have a break with food and beverage available. Now, the problem is that, of course, many times the price point that we have on the vendor meals is quite high. And then when do you fit them into the timeline? There's so many different ways to look at this. But let's talk about the first thing. Vendor meals, right or privilege? I know you're all like,
I have mixed feelings on it. I feel like it is a right in a sense because they are being hired and there's not an ability for them to leave the location to go off premise, so to speak. If you were working at a corporate location or something, you might be able to go off campus. You might be able to go out of the building. They have to stay where they are because they have to be readily available for their next action with the event. So that's the right of being a right. But it's also a privilege because does the host have to pay for it? And what's expected of them? Back when I was in catering, there were totally different. You either had a choice of having the same meal that everybody else is having, all your guests are having at that price point.
Right.
You could do something a little less, maybe a hot meal, or maybe, you do like a box lunch and people, the vendors, do they want a box lunch? The reality is you hear a lot of, not so complimentary notations. With
I love it when they complain when it's free and it's not steak and it's chicken fingers and it's not whatever.
Okay, so by the way, guys, if you're watching the show on Facebook, we are monitoring the comments. So if you want to make a comment in the comment section on the Facebook Live, we will be talking about any of the questions or comments that you come up with. And then also, if you're on our YouTube channel, if you place a comment in below the YouTube, it'll pop right up here. I'll be able to pull it right up on screen. So we want everybody to be involved in this conversation because it is a wide-ranging conversation. Because I can tell you, as an event planner, when somebody offers me, so the client always says, well, Keith, do we include y'all in the vendor meal? I'm like, well, you can include one because I know my team normally doesn't have time to eat because I bring snacks. I'm from the old school thought process that when I worked for corporate America gave me time to have lunch, but I was responsible for bringing my own lunch.
Remind me to talk to you about combos.
Yes, I know. I'm a big.
Apparently, we've ruined Jacob.
I know. I love my combos, and that is it. Yes, it is snack food on there. And Tiffany, yes, honey, I'm about to bring you on. Actually, Tiffany is like, hello, I want to talk about this. But what is your thought process, Marcy? You've always been in the event industry. Has it always been, on as part of it?
No. I mean,
No.
It was not, and it's over the years, it's kind of become this expected almost.
Right.
And I think I saw it on one of the threads. I don't know if it was Fausto or if it was somebody else, but somebody said, it's a standard. I don't think it was Fausto. I think it was somebody else.
Right.
But somebody thought, oh, it's a standard. And is it really a standard? That's the question.
Well, and that is the question. Again, because somebody said it's an industry standard, but what makes an industry standard? I don't understand that process part of it. Who made up the rules that food has to be bought for the vendors? I mean, or would you rather just like have it part of the contract where they give you a per diem? Because as an event professional that travels, as a meeting professional, I mean, I'd go to Las Vegas and people would give us a per diem per day. It was our responsibility to secure the food. But at the end of the day, it was taken care of.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that, people also have a lot of dietary restrictions and such, and your focus as a host, the host person, not the vendor, not the wedding planner, but the host who's having the event, their focus is their guest. They're not concerned with anything aside from their guest. And honestly, nor should they be. I mean, it's really about their guest, but they need to communicate. I think that's the key, is there needs to be some communication. And if it's in a contract,
that's the answer right there.
Which is often the time with, certain areas of vendors. Sometimes they're there the day of and they want to make sure that they're fed. They put it in their contract.
Right. But if you're looking at this from a bride or a bride or groom, right? How many times have we gotten asked, like, what the hell's a vendor meal? What?
I can't tell you how many times.
Right.
Over the years.
Over the years.
I'm going to start wearing black tops to say vendor on the back. Feed me.
Right. The question was always, do I have to feed the vendors? Am I required to feed them?
Yes.
I think it's nice.
Is required.
I think it's nice to feed food to people. Also, I think it's the wedding planner's responsibility to work those fine details out. I'll take it upon myself to actually do that. When I walk in day of, I make sure, to the best of my ability, that Keith's gone through it. I know what's going on. I go to the DOC. I see what's going on. If they're eating what the bride and groom are serving everyone else, if there's something they're making themselves, blah, blah, blah. Right. And there's also a timeline. Certain people eat at certain times.
Well, okay. So
the DJ's not going to leave in the middle of dancing and the first dance to go have a snack. Sorry, it's not happening.
but that's the question, right? When do you have time? When because here's the thing, on the back end of it, I understand the need for a vendor meal, right, quote unquote, and it's part of your contract, quote unquote. But the kitchen is preparing all the food for the guests, and I think absolutely number one thing is that guests should be fed first every single time. I don't really understand the idea of the guest coming second to the vendors. I think that it's the client and the vendors that the client and the guests that are paying for us to be there. And if they weren't having this event, we wouldn't be able to put food on our tables, and then all of a sudden, when do you stop? When do you stop to then go take a break and then also make sure that the kitchen had enough time to get the food to you for that specific break? And then to have vendors complain about the fact that, oh, it's a sandwich. Did you know that there is a whole YouTube channel that critiques vendor meals?
No, I didn't.
No, I sure did not.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, there's a whole YouTube show, and all it is vendors complaining and talking about the horrible vendor meal that they were served. Not that they weren't served, the fact that they were served a vendor meal. And they complain about the steak, they complain about the pasta, they complain about the chicken. I mean, I was fascinated. I totally went down this like whole rabbit hole of watching this show. And I'll have to pull it up.
And for some reason, I don't know about this, and it's probably a good thing.
So I want to actually put a question out there for both of you. When you see a vendor who is cutting the line in front of guests to get things off of the reception table, how do you handle it? I mean, in this day and age, it's very different than years ago. But I mean, to each his own.
If they've been hired through Keith Willard events, they know better, and that's not a situation for us. But Keith, before me, you may have a story.
Well, no. I mean, the thing is that
I did.
So what did you used to do? How did you used
I
to
walked
handle
up to
this?
them and I pulled them aside and I said, it's inappropriate for you to be taking food from the guests. You need to wait till your meal is served and
Right.
we'll get that to you as soon as we can.
It's extremely tacky.
But what do
It's
you? I mean,
tacky.
yeah, but what do you say when they say, "Oh, well, I don't have time"? What do
They
you
said,
say to somebody that
the
you know
person
I'm?
said to me that they were hungry. And I said,
Girl,
well,
I
maybe
was
you
there at
should
10 a.m.
pack
It's
some
5 p.m. I'm
snacks.
hungry and I still haven't.
I said, maybe you should pack some snacks. I mean, what am I going to say? I mean, I just was kind of like stunned. Like, why would you ever think to do that?
Right.
You know, and not only that, in some cases, when the chef is figuring out the food, how much food to order and such, there's
Right.
sometimes a finite period, a finite amount that they're ordering based on the number of people. So you have to, they need to understand that sometimes it has to be, there's an allotment and
Right.
you can't take something away from the guest. You're there to do a job
Right.
and not be a guest.
But you just contradicted yourself a little bit.
I did.
But you see how messy this gets?
It gets very, very messy.
Because then we really talk about the number of vendors. So let's say that, as an event planner, I count the number of musicians, sound engineers, my staff, photographers, videographers. So we know, let's say 18 vendor meals need to be prepared for that Saturday night. Right. Mm-hmm. But then all of a sudden we walk into the vendor room where all the vendor meals are and the florists are eating them, or
I've done it. My fault. I have so sat down florists before musicians, and here I'm gonna tell you why. Those people that are doing my flowers, I showed up at 10 a.m. They were there at 10:30 a.m. Well, I know, you guys are complaining about food. You've been here an hour.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? we didn't have them included in the vendor meal numbers, and that's the issue. We have
but
to.
If they stay, but like a florist, are they staying for the event, or were they just there to set up?
They were just there to set up. I know. I know.
So why are they staying around?
Well, and here's the problem. It wasn't just the fact that it wasn't them actually that caused the issue. It was the fact that the band showed up, all the stagehands who were supposed to have left on the truck saw that the food was out, and they all stayed. And there must have been 11 of them. I mean, yes. It was a crazy number, and they ate all of the food.
And of the day, we were 3 meals short. So me, Keith, and one other person, we gave our food.
We gave our food to the vendor because we wanted them to be
I gave our food away to the florists because
the florists work. Well, and that's what I'm saying is that we had enough food. They over prepared for the vendors, but then we get all these other vendors that are coming in and eating the food that was pre-done specifically for the number of vendors that are working the event. And I think that really
remember the gala fiasco?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is that we have to really focus on what do we mean by vendor meals? Is it vendor meals
who are we
people
feeding? Which vendors and when?
Who are we feeding? And what does that include as far as number of hours? Does that mean that if you're there at 10, but you leave at 4, you don't get a vendor meal? Because that's 6 hours. And most vendors are there for 6 hours or 8 hours on average, right? So where does the line stop when it comes to, who do we feed? And then on top of all this, the cost of the vendor meal.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that has gone up so much.
Okay, and
order pizza, kids. I'm telling
you, right? But here's the thing: is that I don't know if it's just me, but vendor meals, the cost of the vendor meals has skyrocketed because I feel like it's like the one thing that you have to do because it's in everybody's contract, right? And
not just because of COVID. Right. This is before COVID.
And so that means that the hotels basically have you in a corner. You have to buy a vendor meal because it's in your contract with the vendor, and they won't let you bring in outside food or beverage.
Right. Which is another story.
Which is another story, which is a whole nother show.
Right. But try and search my bag. I got a pistol next to my sandwich, so
that's what I'm saying is that here we are. So here, not only are we worried about whether or not it's a right or a privilege for food for the vendors, then it's number of vendors, timing, when it comes to when does it come out with the kitchen, who eats first, the guest or the vendors, which vendors get fed, and now we're at pricing and cost for the vendor meals. I mean, I've seen it as high as $100 a vendor.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Wow.
No.
I
And
mean,
I
it
was
was in
like,
the days, it was
ridiculous.
in the, like, what, $16.95 for a
Yes.
box lunch?
Oh, no. That whole
Well,
mess, when
No,
I
I know
messed up
that. I
inside
know
the
it's not like
florist,
that anymore.
instead
That's
of
years
the
ago.
stagehands, when I
yeah.
asked how much the meal was, I was flabbergasted.
Yeah.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. And then they add service charge and tax on it. So
Right.
again, I understand hotels have to make money. They are given these rules and regulations from the people above them. But I feel like this world of vendor meals, and this is just one topic, guys, of behind the scenes that happens, that as people go through wedding planning, they start to discover and learn. And vendor meals is just one of those things that we don't have a lot of control over, and we don't have a lot of rules that tell us what is right and proper and what is not, because it depends on who you talk to and their point of view. Because
I'll try and feed everybody.
Right?
Straight up.
Oh yeah.
I do.
Girl, she does. She really does. She's like, let me go down to the vending machine. I'll get you a couple of Snicker bars or something. And I'm like, no,
Order
girl.
a pizza, something. I try to
She's
feed them
so
all.
sweet. I know that.
Well, but she also understands.
I do try. No, I do try
You
to
do
feed them all.
understand
I'll
it.
give
I
them my
mean,
food. Like,
yeah.
Right, but but the thing is again, is it a right or a privilege at the very end of the day?
I think it's a privilege.
I think it's a privilege too, because I feel like, if you worked for corporate America, I'm going to go back to corporate America. If you worked on corporate America, they give you the time, so that is a definite. That is state law. You work a number of hours, you're supposed to get a certain amount of time for a break. But nowhere does it stay in the state of Florida or in the Constitution or whatever law that you want to look up, that the food itself has to be provided. You have to then bring your own food. So what happened to lunch? What happened to bringing your lunchbox?
It's like stretch pants. They're a privilege, not a
But
right.
the question is
am I right or am I wrong?
But the question really is
Oh,
if they have to bring their own lunch and they're being told they cannot bring lunch inside,
Right.
then that becomes the issue. And I think that there needs to be that the venues need to come up with a solution. I understand somebody has to pay for it.
Totally agree with Marcy.
But I think the venues have to come up with a solution, because if their rules are no food or beverage to be brought in, then they have to figure out how to make it attainable for them.
I agree.
Well, okay, so Susan Jaffe, who we all know and love, she's been a kind of one of the pillars of our community. She says, in the flow of event, there should be time worked in for vendor meals or a break that doesn't affect anything that is happening during the event. I agree. And typically I would factor this for 20 minutes while the guests are eating and before toasts or special dances are happening. Love. Vendors that are on setup are all gone by the time the event happens. That includes florists, roadies, etc. The meals should only be the meals should only be provided for those that are working the event all night.
I agree.
Well,
true.
Okay.
True on that. I'm just listen.
But you
and
just
I've learned the hard way.
But if you're going by the 6-hour rule that Brooke had pointed out, or I think it was maybe you, if you're going by that 6-hour rule, does that rule still apply to the people that were there earlier in the day to do the setup? And honestly, I mean, I never included the people that were there to set up. I always included just the people that were there for the evening of the event, who were actually physically working with the interaction with the guests.
And in my defense, the florists that we're speaking of at this particular venue stayed all night.
Well, okay,
they were there all night until breakdown time. So that's why I did what I did.
I know, but here's the thing, and I'm so excited because joining us on this conversation is Katana Wurt. So hi, Katana.
Katana, yes.
Hi, Katana.
How is everyone? I don't know where my picture looks like, but
that's all right. We're just glad to have you, because we've been having this discussion and we've been reading people's comments and stuff, and we've talked about the fact that vendor meals, is it a right or a privilege? And I think that everybody has basically been saying it's a privilege, and you have to be careful about what is a privilege. But then David King, by the way, also been out there for ages, and I love him, said first time watching the show. Good for you. The vendor was hired there for service. Their job is to serve the client as they were paid. They should eat before any event, and any event I did, I waited for the event to be over, and trust me, I was hungry.
If your start time is 5:30, 6 o'clock p.m., child, I was probably at that wedding at 10 a.m., if not 9.
Yep.
Get yourself a sandwich. Hit the drive-through, darling, on the way down to the gig.
Yeah.
Nope.
And so then, of
No.
course, Tiffany responded, like, should I eat 11 a.m. and not until 11 p.m.? I don't think that's the question here. I think the question is, we give you time to eat. Whose responsibility is it to give you food or to provide food? Is it for you to provide your own food, or is it expected? And I understand that it's part of the contract, but, and that supposedly it's become industry standard, but I still go back to that first question. Who made the standard? When did this become an industry standard?
Who did this to us? I want to know.
Well, but Katana, I mean, you were on the other side of this. You were on the venue side of it and the catering side of it.
I was on the venue side. I've been a caterer, a venue manager, planner, and vendor in the situation of, being at the mercy of a venue.
Right.
To possibly get a meal. And, I don't always expect it. I don't know if I should expect it, but typically as a planner, it is something that's discussed with the client ahead of time. You discuss vendor meals. As a planner, I do it all the time. I always, get in touch with video, photography, DJ, whomever is going to be there, who has it on their contract.
Right.
Look at how many of us have it on their contract. I have it on my contract.
Right.
If I'm in your venue a certain number of hours, I do require a meal.
Right.
So
work. She said, feed me.
But let me ask you, but
is
it, did you include that in your contract because you saw it so many times in other people's contract that you decided to add it to your own because you're like, well, I'm not going to be the only one that's not fed that night,
Yeah.
Or
I find
video
and photography. I find that video and photography across the board, no matter what event I do, no matter what venue I'm in,
right,
they require and in their contract a vendor meal, and they'll come out to you and say it. Yeah.
So to bands. But then when does this become an irritant? I posted what I posted the other day, not because somebody was asking for a vendor meal. I posted what I posted because of the response I got. The rudeness, the almost acidic tone that came back. And I'm like, look, I'm doing the best I can to try to make sure
and
that
I had
the
it
guest
handled and scheduled the whole entire time.
Yeah, and of course she did. But
and I agree. I read it.
But the guest has to come first. The guest
to the point where their table was set up with chairs in their own space and everything. But guess what? This is your job. This is what you're hired to do. My bride and groom are dancing right now. You can have your sandwich.
I completely agree.
Do your job. I'm doing mine. You can do yours. I haven't eaten a thing yet. But not even a combo.
Yes, I agree. And to your point, Keith, on all that, it's so annoying when they'll come to you and say, well, I have to eat first because then if they do anything afterwards, I have to be ready. And I as I understand their side,
right?
When I'm the caterer, we need to get the bride and groom and all the guests through the line. You'll have your meal. And you know what? If you don't want to enjoy what the rest of us are enjoying,
order the number 2 on the way down.
We have some rice in the back. I'll put it in a cup for you, and you could go eat your meal.
Right.
Well, there's plenty of times where we've actually to-go boxed one of my favorite entertainment groups that we use a lot. I will personally go and box up their stuff for them and bring that to them in a bag, and they eat when they have time. And so those are my Mike's Hype. I'm going to shout it out. It's Mike's Hype. I love because they are so easy to work with.
And Mike's Hype never gives us crap about it. I mean,
Never.
he knows that we're working
because I make sure they eat. And it's all good.
Well, and I think that's the other thing is that because there's mutual respect there, and they know the kind of hard work that we're putting in as planners, because we're not sitting down, right? No. We're going to try to do everything we can,
right?
But this does
also, I think it's easier too when we actually we use our vendor list opposed to when it's out of our control in a sense to when you've hired someone else and it's not through my list of folk. So there's the problem that started right there.
Well, okay, and that is another thing. Go ahead, Marcy.
One of the things that I actually did is even though I wasn't the planner. Like I wasn't a wedding event planner. I was a wedding specialist. And I would, when I was like the director of catering, or if I was, management, I used to actually contact all of the vendors before the event day, and I would verify how many people were going to come. And I find so often these days, that's a step that's overlooked, because ultimately when they come on site, you want to make sure you're providing the right amount. But you tell them, I'm going to provide you with one meal, or I'm going to provide you with 2 meals. Whatever it is, I think that there's a lack of communication, and that's breaking down even more so over the years.
Well, I think that's not just a lack of communication. I think that there's an actual taking advantage of in the background sometimes.
Yes.
Because again, when you do have bands and you have roadies and you have all these other people, I get it. They're like, why does the talent until we get to eat? And we never get to eat. And I get that. I can understand, why they would have that kind of attitude. But it also means don't go steal people's food or, sit in a room. And because the buffet is all set up early, once in
Show
a
hands
blue
off
moon,
my combos.
right? Exactly. But we're typically so busy in the room that we don't see what's going on over in the background, right?
No,
and so so I love the fact that Marcy said, well, this gets overlooked, but it doesn't, because we go through the BEO process, and it is basically the number one question that a hotel will ask, because they get beat up constantly. Not only do they get to charge whatever the hell they want, but they also get beat up because they don't have enough food and they don't have it at the right time, and blah 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 blah, and and their focus isn't the guest. And I think that when you have 8 different vendors, 8 different companies, all with a different idea of what this consists of, what does a break consist of, like a vendor. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the when is probably one of the biggest problems, is the when.
When am I going to eat?
When they're going to eat. I have to eat now. Well,
yeah.
It's not always possible at that now. And if you really need to know, there's particular times as a vendor that you need to eat, bring it with you. I bring a lunchbox or a cooler to every event. Hands down, across the board, whether it's snacks, waters, food.
Well,
my grandmother worked at a restaurant called the Blue Jay, a restaurant, as a waitress, and she brought her own bagged lunch every day to work. And I'll tell you why in a little bit. But the point is, especially if you've got dietary restrictions and dietary needs, bring. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a reason Keith brings combos. I can tell you what the list is. Like, there's 4 things that are in the bag: Red Bull, combos, an adult Lunchable.
Yep, always.
And there's Reese's. And
And
there's sugar.
Adult Lunchable. So
and if anybody's eating for free, I'm the first one in line for the steak, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm the wedding planner's assistant.
Yeah.
Right.
That should if we're bringing stuff.
Well, you're not actually ever first. You don't ever get
and when I have a timeline that's 8 pages long, because every 15 minutes is allocated to what it is. Come on now.
Well, and that's the other thing, is that
I'll share my combos.
But I think that weddings have gotten very tight with the number of things that clients or couples are wanting to get done in a certain amount of time. I mean, because now we have videography and photography all kind of blown into the, and so there's more components to these things. I mean, when it used to be just photography, then you just worried about, okay, I need to get my sunset picture. But videography is different, because you got to get words and actions involved in there, and that takes a little bit more time. And then also, you never know.
Tammy's over there having a steak.
Right. But also, you don't ever know when these amazing moments are going to happen. I don't even know how you could be a videographer and know when you can go eat, because as soon as you leave, grandma says something amazing or decides that she wants to speak right then.
Speeches, dances, all that kind of thing. The first kiss, the clang, clang, clang. You need to be there to capture that. That's what your job is. That's what you got paid
Now, let
to
me
do.
ask this too.
Not over here complain about a steak or a chicken finger.
Yeah.
What time you might be able to consume it.
How many of them do you give them a dinner? You give them their entree, or you give them what they're going to eat, and they go somewhere, and now you can't find them. They really go somewhere, like they disappear, and now you're getting moments, and your head is blowing up, because where's the photographer? Where's video? I can't find them, and they've wandered. They went outside to eat.
Sitting in the corner of the reception area eating my combos.
You are still on the clock.
Smoking.
Like, don't run away. Here's your food, but you left. We couldn't find you, and the bride wanted you. So to me, that's another problem with the eating. Take your food, but don't disappear. You're on the clock.
Right.
And that's the other thing is that you're on the clock. What about a per diem? I mean, why can't we do a per diem instead of an actual food item? I mean, that's how they take care of it when we do, when we have to take care of meetings that are, cross country. Like, let's say we have a pharmaceutical conference, they give each of us a per diem per day, and we're responsible for buying our own food, which to me is great, because then I can either pocket that per diem, so that's extra money in my pocket.
Truckload of combos.
Yeah, or buy a bunch of other combos. So I don't understand why a per diem is not something that would be acceptable. Why does it have to be an actual vendor meal? Any comments or thoughts? And by the way, comments and thoughts on Facebook and YouTube as well. What about a per diem versus an actual vendor meal?
I like that idea. The only thing is, again, when do they get to eat? The time becomes the issue. And then also, what can they bring in? Because some places don't allow you to bring things in. So the question is can they, can't they break away like a half of an hour, not even a half an hour, whatever it is, break away before the reception or the ceremony,
right?
Have your quick meal. And then during the actual reception, during the evening, the dinner, maybe you break away for 5 or 10 minutes, but you're really close by. You're not disappearing. You're in the eyesight of people to find you that are employees or other vendors, but never in front of the guests.
Well, okay.
I'll tell you when the photographer can eat, or the videographer. When I'm bustling up the bride, I'm in the bathroom and she's peeing. We don't need that on film, nor pictures of it. So that's a decent time to probably go shut down that chicken finger. DJs, easy breezy. Playlist. Right. There's that part of the meal that you can escape out for 20 minutes if you've got a playlist. I promise.
The 20 minutes is a long time.
Finger in that combo.
20 minutes is a long time. But, Tiffany came up actually with a very good comment. She goes, when people don't give us a place to eat, where do you want us to go? And I think that is a big piece of this, is that if you're going to have vendor meals, you got to have a location that is I
always try to make sure it's as quiet as possible, but still as close to where you need to be in case I need you in a snap of my fingers.
Like an adjacent room, but within earshot of the vendors.
And sometimes the venue is accommodating and sometimes they can't be, but we still try to get you as close to where you're supposed to be working as possible, but in a private space so you can have a little downtime and 700 people aren't watching you eat.
Right.
Well, and then look, we got from Cindy Curtis. She said, as a singer at an event, I would never think of taking food that isn't given to the band. See, I feel like that's a rarity. Usually they will give us food at a certain time. And that's true. I feel like the band is very specific, when it comes to band meals. I mean, it's almost like the holy grail of food. It's like you don't screw with the band food ever.
Right. And again, if you're on our vendor list, mine and Keith's vendor list, then you already know the tea. There is no questions because they already know as soon as they see me, the second they walk in, hi Brooke, how are you? I'm so excited to work with you and Keith. Like they always do. They already know it's coming down the pipeline. Yeah, I'm going to go do a head count, find out how many meals I need, and go through my timeline and then pinpoint a couple of spots where they'll be able to eat if they want. Because weddings are live too, just like this show. Yeah. So sometimes we have to massage things and work with, to make sure everybody's job's done.
Well, and we don't always know.
At 8:15 you can't eat. Yeah, at 8:15 when I want you to eat, maybe you can't because speeches ran too long, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
But you're true,
Brooke. That's true. Actually,
it's
true.
It is true. It's never really it's not an exact science when you can eat. Your timeline can be more of a science to a degree because we do know, like you just said, things will always switch up here and there, and things are going to happen. So their meal is not the biggest part of your timeline. It may be part of your timeline, but it's, bam. It's not.
They should be more worried about their job, to be honest, and where that combo or chicken fingers coming down. On a plate one.
And that ties right into what Susan Jaffe just said. She said, you're being paid a fee for a service. You should not be paid to eat, but should be provided along with a break to keep you going for the evening. Okay. Good for you. All right.
Just I said it. I'll say it again. Stretch pants. It's a privilege.
It is a privilege.
Katya told me that.
How many breaks do you really get in a day? Any of you, I know what my day is usually like. How many breaks, true break, where you can just kick back and you really don't have anything to worry about during a
Never, nothing.
planning day? You don't
Nothing.
really,
No.
because somebody always needs you for something.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I mean, so in the morning when you get there, you're trying to calm down the bridesmaids and the groomsmen and get them in the right place, and the makeup artist, and then the mother overdrank, so you're trying to make sure she gets Tylenol, and then you got to make sure that, oh God, who forgot the ketubah? Okay, and then somebody forgot the rings. Send somebody to go get the rings. I mean, it's just constant.
The parents of the bride fighting, and you got to kind of separate them, and yeah.
And then the thing is that I think at the end of the day is what really irritates me is that when people give me attitude about their food, and I'm like,
the nicest wedding planner on the planet.
Well, no, sometimes I'm not so nice, but there's but I haven't eaten since the night before. I mean, I think I had a cheeseburger at 9:00 the night before, because that morning I had to run out the house because I was like, oh my God, we got it. The makeup artist is early. That never happens. Anyway, makeup artist will be on time, but I don't think I wouldn't be a makeup artist early at 7 a.m.
Once you put 2 days prior, I'm like, do we have the makeup artist or what?
That sounds familiar.
And Julie Brown-Fluger, the only vendors I feel like I need a hot meal are the planners, team, photography, and videography, as they start early with the bride and go all day. The damn bands arrive an hour before they go on and there for 6 hours. Then I have to chase them back from smoking.
Yes, love her. Send her a bag of combos, Keith.
And here is a good gourmet band. Okay, I love Bandwich. I love it. Okay, good for you, Julie. And then that's what I'm saying, is that it is on both sides. You get this really intense reaction, because depending on where you are in the event planning industry, if you're a band, your only world is knowing that you didn't get provided food at a timely manner in order to be able to do your job. So that's what you see. That's all you see. You don't see like all the drama that happened before the wedding started, or all the drama that's happening behind the scenes. You only see what's happening on stage.
Can I say something? This is going to ring through real quick.
Okay.
You got paid X amount of thousands of dollars for this event to do your job.
Right.
Again, you can afford a drive-through number 2, supersize it. Shit. Get me one too. You know what I mean? But it's a privilege. I like to feed people. I'm all about it. I'm for it. I think feed them all, I say.
Right.
But sometimes thinking and be about your way is the way to go. Not come at me like, what? Yeah.
Well, and so I'm trying to be a good moderator and say that, oh girl, I can hear you sucking on that straw a mile away.
Hold on, pause. Pause.
That was good. That was good.
I love that. That was funny. No, but I mean, as a wedding planner, oops, let me get her out of here. Where is she? Why is she here? No, but as individual vendors, we don't really know what's going on with the other vendors. Here's the thing, is that if you're a band, you think you're only visually thinking of a band. If you're a florist, you're only thinking from a florist perspective. It's very difficult to look at it from a planner's perspective, because we're looking at all of the pieces. And so I think that if anything, a good planner is worth their weight in gold, first of all. But secondly, your individual vendors should be reaching out to the planner to kind of get a temperature on what else is happening.
I think I put it on my note yesterday, is that the vendors should be contacting either, if there is no wedding planner, they need to be contacting the caterer. If there is a wedding planner, they should be contacting the wedding planner, and they should be asking them, is there going to be a meal for me, or do I need to provide my own? If, I mean, that's essentially, you should be contacting them anyway. I mean, there needs to be some communication there anyway, because, it's a couple days before. You don't want them to not show up. You want to make sure that everybody's going to be there.
Right. Well,
sorry for my disappearance. I was looking for my bundle drink. I found it. It was in the kitchen.
I'm sure you've all had this, though. As soon as the vendor shows up at the venue, your wedding hasn't even started yet. You're running around. You're getting everything ready. And your vendor comes up to you and says, when's my vendor meal?
Yep.
They just walked in the door. They're still carrying bags. Why are you already so concerned about what time you're eating? That's the part,
We don't
I
run into a
think,
lot of that because we
that
don't
really
hire those people.
blows
No,
my mind.
we deal with it.
What gives you,
Right.
I've been here since 7 o'clock this morning. What gives you the right to walk in the door at 5 o'clock
Yep.
and start setting up? And the first thing you approach me with is, when do I eat? So I've probably already provided for you with the caterer that you
Yep.
are going to eat.
Yep.
Do you really need to know right now? Wouldn't it be, where should I set up? Where do I plug in? Where can I put my gear? I would accept that. That's acceptable. But when do I eat? Probably 3 hours prior to the time you may get your food. It's not acceptable. It's not as the planner and not as the caterer too. They'll
Right.
walk right into the kitchen and say, "When's my meal?"
You should have
Where
already
do we
had
eat?
2. It's 5 o'clock. You should have had breakfast and lunch already. How could
Now,
you possibly be hungry?
Pack
All
a
right.
protein bar.
Have you ever gotten this one?
So I'm
Pack
actually
a protein
Or a
bars.
hot meal?
I'm
Have you
gonna
ever
bring
gotten that one?
I know, but I'm gonna get
Require a hot meal?
Yeah, I know. I don't understand the require the hot meal thing, but I did actually get a very interesting comment from Kelly O'Brien, who said, by the way, that she has taken her food with her all day and been on site for 8 to 12 hours. But the problem is that there's no real refrigeration on site for their sandwich and has had meat go bad while she was there. Now, the opposite side of this, I get that, but the opposite side of it is that there's cooling containers and lunch boxes with ice packs in them now that we use all the time. My husband's a school teacher, and I can guarantee you, as a school teacher, they do not provide them refrigeration. They barely provide them pencils. I mean, so he has to make sure that his bag, whatever he's got with him, is going to be available to eat when and be fresh whenever he actually gets a chance to eat it.
And then make fanny packs big enough to actually contain and hold a easy bake oven. So I'm going to start just carrying that around with me, and I'll just start making cookies and pies for everybody. For all the vendors. 2 seconds, 3 minutes, I got it for you right here.
But I have
Boom.
to say that's
There
a
you
very
go.
good point. I'm going to just give it for Kelly because I really think that's
good
a good point, that, if there was some refrigeration in there. But again, it goes back to the original question.
Yeah, don't get it twisted. We want you to eat, but damn, Gina.
Right or privilege. I think at the end of the day, my personal thought on this is that we are there to perform a job. We've been hired. The only reason that we have the job, the only reason that we are making the money that we are making, is because the event is happening. Now, if we don't like the fact that we don't get a vendor meal or we don't like the timeline, it is up to us to say yes or no to that contract. And I think Tiffany actually did a really good job of presenting that comment ahead before. It's like, if you don't like what's in the contract, take it out, and then we have a chance to say yes or no. Absolutely. I think that's absolutely appropriate. But I think that also there does have to become a point, like, when do we say the client is more important while the event is happening? Because shit happens constantly at events.
And I'm sure there's people that do video and that have their caught under their sugar or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's health issues and stuff like that. So, like, listen, we're not assholes. We are nice people. We're super exotic. But also, just don't be a dick.
Right. Don't be a Richard.
Don't be a
Don't
dick.
be a Richard.
The approach.
Don't be a donkey.
Actually, it goes back to the point that you were talking about earlier, where you had somebody who was being very rude to you. The person that I had, who I had to address and say, you can't eat food from the reception table, and cut lines in front of guests. They were very rude back to me. I mean, and that's the whole thing, is you can't be, from vendor to vendor, person to person, you have to learn to respect and live with each other. And if you're going to be rude about it, you're not going to get much on a referral.
We have to play in the same sandbox here.
There's a lot of things that then go into your future business. You want to be respectful of one another.
Well, and that, I think, at the end of the day, is the really most important part, is that we, as planners, as other vendors, we are paying attention to what is happening during the event. And if we're getting attitude from another vendor for something that we don't either have control over or that we're trying to solve, right? Either those two things. Either it's something that we don't have control over, or it's something that we're trying to solve. And you give us attitude, I'm not going to be. I'm definitely not going on my list to talk to other people because I need to work with people.
I'm not an earshot of it.
Well, and because you need to work with people that that you can work as a team with, and that if something does happen, if the shit does hit the fan, I have a whole team that's willing to say, you know what, maybe I don't need my sandwich this 30 minutes. Maybe I can sneak it in during a pee break. All right, and make this event amazing because 1 out of 10 this happens. 9 of 10 we get an amazing break and amazing food, and it's all perfect.
But wouldn't you also think all of us, we do this all the time?
Yes.
Bands do it all the time. DJs do it all the time. Video photography. If you're a seasoned professional, if this is something you've been doing, wouldn't you would think that all of this would be just common knowledge. You would think that everybody knows this, that you know what to expect, and you expect the unexpected.
Right.
When you're on the vendor side, nothing is ever written in stone. We all know that. Yep. Emergencies and things on the fly happen all the time. I had a bride and a maid of honor at each other the other day, sisters.
Of course.
Because the bride decided no speeches.
Videographer, so please tell me there was a videographer nearby.
Right there.
Yes.
And I had to do the hand in the camera. Send them away.
Hot.
They were, because the bride decided something, her sister didn't agree with it.
Right.
So things are happening, and you're as well as I do.
Right.
We're doing things all the time. So as a professional on that side, you would know that nothing is going to be consistent at every single event, except it's going to start and it's going to end. Those are the only two things that we know are going to happen. They're going to start and they're going to end. Whatever happens in the middle,
we don't know. And and
sometimes if it's a Keith Willard event, it's going to start and end on what? On time.
Well, and that's the thing is that sometimes we are praying for the damn event to end. I mean, oh my God, are we praying? We're like, please let this event be over. Please let this event be over. But I think that at the end of the day, it's a small community. It's one of those things that when I was working for the hotel and I went to work for another hotel, inevitably I ran into other people that worked at the other hotel, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing happens with vendors and venues. When we're in the event industry, we all know and work with each other. And it's like, why would you give me attitude? So this is actually going to go back to the original reason that I even did the post and that we were even doing the show today, is that it wasn't the fact that she was asking for a vendor meal. Didn't bother me at all because it was part of it and it was in my timeline. And we had worked with the hotel, who, by the way, we've done lots of events at this hotel. They always do an amazing job, right? They always are very, very good at making sure that the vendors get fed. So that wasn't the issue. It was her attitude back to me. And not just her attitude back to me in that moment, but the cold shoulder and the snake-like intensity.
Well, she tried me, and I have
why?
Why? Yes. I mean, people want to work with people they know, like, and trust. I mean, that's the bottom line is, you're not going to want to work with somebody you don't have, those core 3 items.
Right. And the thing is that, I recommend this particular vendor a bunch. And now I'm having to second guess myself. And it's not because the vendor itself, not the ownership, because it wasn't, believe me, she is not the ownership. She is an employee. But, that just goes a long way to show you how an employee can really affect your relationships with other vendors if you do not have a discussion with them to say, look, I understand that we have been all busy. And I think now it's worse than ever because we have been all so busy. Oh my God, so busy. Labor shortages, truck shortages, too many events, too many people. And, the meal has become kind of that, that trophy that, damn it, I had the shittiest day. I'm going to get my damn vendor meal. I don't care whatever else happens in today. I want my damn sandwich,
That's too funny.
Right. And I understand that has become the dividing factor, but I think that we need to step back a little bit from that and go, okay, and then by the way, why don't we have an industry standard like rule book?
It's a good question.
You couldn't possibly.
I know.
there are different associations. There are different viewpoints from different angles.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
it's just like
within
it's
the
because it's
industry.
live too, and it's like the show. Like it's just anything kind of goes, and you got to roll with the punches.
Yeah.
Put out fires, so to speak.
But I mean, how is there not a book of this kind of rule and I bet it changes from state.
Keith's
I bet
next
you.
project.
Oh, you know what? No, I bet you.
Well-
I bet you go to New York. It's union. I was actually at a bar doing an event in New York, and I needed a bar rag that was literally behind the bartender on the counter behind him, and he said, "I can't do that."
Bartell.
And I went,
Mhm.
and I was like, Bartell. And I said,
Really?
It's right there. I need it. He goes, that's the barback's job, and we're unionized.
Wow.
I was like, what? Oh
Get
my
the F
God.
out of here with that bullshit.
That blows my mind. He couldn't touch the cloth.
Yeah, I couldn't touch the cloth. It was really specific.
Wow.
It was really
Wow.
specific. Yeah, but
If it was a $20,000 piece of glass or crystal, I get it, but it's a bar towel. You can't.
But
do
you know, like
this.
who, even if it were a standard, then who pays for it? Because ultimately, is it the responsibility of the vendor? Is it the responsibility of the client? Is it the responsibility of the venue? Because ultimately, it comes out of somebody's pocket. The money comes from somewhere. And I mean, let's face it, nobody wants to have it taken out of their pocket.
Yeah.
Well, who do you all make it responsible for? What do you typically see across the board? Typically, I see it's the client. Right. It's one of my questions on my questionnaire because it does usually come down from the caterer. The caterer says if they request vendor meals, that has to be put onto their contract. Right. How many and how much? Every time.
What if the client says, I don't want to pay for their meals? Then where does the money come from?
Then Keith's buying pizza or Keith's not buying pizza.
Exactly. Exactly. Then it's going to be on the planner, directly on the planner. Unless it's in their contract and the client didn't read it. How many times have you seen that? I'll tell a client all the time,
constantly.
You will be required to pay for your videographer, your band,
no, I'm
and your
trying to think the last 3.5 years, have we ever not said somebody?
Contract? Yeah, but it's constant. And I'm like, well, you already signed the contract, so you're responsible for it. But I do actually have an interesting question from Tiffany, and I actually, this will be really interesting to see what you guys say. Do you feel like the rude and entitled vendors are the younger generation or seasoned professionals?
Definitely not a seasoned professional.
What?
No.
I think it's.
I think that's a great question.
It is a great question.
Experience with a seasoned professional.
I don't think the age has any bearing on it. I feel that it's their personality is coming through, and is it authentic or not? Because
I will tell you that I get more crap from people that are in bands that have been in a wedding band for 20, 30 years that are hardcore about their wedding meal. Yeah. Usually if it's a young,
that makes sense,
just got into the business, is trying to make a name for themselves, they tend to be a lot more flexible and be like, whatever you need. And I love that because of course they're making a name for themselves.
Makes our job easier too.
But the other thing is, I don't ever find owners of a business to be the ones asking for a vendor meal specific time.
True.
It always seems to be somebody that works for another business asking for the vendor meal. Yes. And I mean, I'm probably going to get bitch slapped for saying this, but I think that people that are self-employed and this is their livelihood are much more likely to go, okay, let me work with you because I want this. But if you're an hourly and you're whether or not if you do a good job doesn't really depend on whether or not you get the next contract.
Right. That's true.
Self-entitlement. I want to know where Gloria is so self-entitled that she thinks she gets to have steak at 7 p.m. Bro, I'm lucky if I can shove a freaking combo up my nose and in my ears, let alone my mouth.
Oh my God.
I've been here for 12 hours.
She's going to be talking about combos until the day she dies. I mean, you love the combos. I have to go get the pretzel ones for you specifically, so don't even try because you're.
Yeah, I haven't had them. So
right. She's like, I don't like the cracker ones. I need the pretzel ones, not the cracker ones.
You ask questions, I give answers. You want feedback, I tell you. I don't demand anything. I mean, I'm buying my own cigarettes now. I think that's.
Well, we've all been there. We've all been there with our sack of snacks and our. and a cooler. Like I said, a cooler comes everywhere with me. Even when I go on meetings in the car, you just never know.
We have a
when
freaking
you're
toolbox.
feed
We're
you
so
when you're
great.
alone in
Come
the
on,
car.
kids, get in, fall in line here.
It's just part of what you pack in the morning, and be done with it, because you don't know when you're or if you
if
can
you're
eat.
going to be getting anything.
Or or if you're going to be able to eat. I mean, I think
Also,
at the end
here's
of the
something
day,
else. P.S. This is my biggest thing with this whole situation, because I was there for this.
I know she was.
Do you want to be called back? Do you want to? I mean, you are working for the best wedding planners running since 19 to 22 in the Hall of Fame, all the awards, right? All the things. You're working for us.
No. I mean,
you want to call back or no?
But that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's the owners of the companies. It's the people working for the owners of the companies.
Exactly, because
but they're representing their company.
Yeah,
first and foremost.
And somebody did not do a very good job of that.
It's more than just the wedding planner that interacts with the person. There's other people, other professionals there that are also interacting, other vendors. They see what's going on. How does that reflect on your company? Your company. If you're the owner of the company, you want to communicate to your employee what what's expected of them and
also it's
they
how
can expect to receive.
Handle that situation too, because that's going to come. If I'm doing it, which 9 times out of 10 it's me. If I make the wrong move, it makes him look bad.
Mm-hmm.
And us.
Yeah. You don't make wrong moves, really. But
no.
Okay, so I know. Look at me, little Bruno's here.
But
anyway.
She came on live TV looking like a swamp witch.
Well, I think swamp witch? I don't think that. I think we've had a really well-rounded discussion about this. I don't think that we've come up with any real answers, but I do hope that people that are out there that are listening to this understand that it's a much more complicated subject than it sounds.
It's not just a sandwich, kids.
It's not just a sandwich, right? And it's not like stretch pants. It's it's
a privilege.
It's not a right. It's a privilege. It's a privilege. Oh my goodness! So go ahead, Marcy.
Fausto Pfeiffer
is going to be with us.
He's going to be with us in March, which I'm really excited about, because he actually did have a lot to say on this subject, and I don't think we really touched on much of this, and maybe we can kind of bring some of that up again.
Well, what I love about what what I love about having him on the show is that actually we're going to be talking about food waste and cost when it comes to real dollars and cents. What does vendor meals really cost us in lots of different ways, and timing and food waste and cost. And I think that's a whole different perspective, because that's just dollars and cents, and it's hard line numbers versus how do we feel. I mean, I feel like this show is all about how do we feel about this. And I think that show is going to be like, what is this costing us as an industry? And I'm super excited. So that's going to be March 8th.
Yeah, we're just mouthy and opinionated today.
Yeah, we're just mouthy and opinionated. And Marcy, will you tell us a little bit about who we're having on next week?
So next week we are having CC Todd.
Yes.
She is a celebrity florist, and she actually was just on a show on one of the channels that we'll get into next week a little bit more, and she'll fill you in on what her area is all about. It's going to be a great masterclass kind of feel.
And she's going to talk about, and she's really going to be talking about, like, the difference between celebrities and the individual. Like, what are the expectations between a celebrity wedding, and what are the things that you have to do with? I mean, I'm really excited about that.
Very
and then
excited.
on the 15th, we have Laura Nichols from BBJ Linen to talk about all the latest and greatest of like what the season has to hold for us. And then on the 22nd, we have Terica, and of course, I don't have my note on her, but we'll have more.
I want to know when I get to see Katana again. Let's talk about that.
She's a great speaker. You don't want to miss it. I mean,
she brought the hair today too. I'm so excited.
Well, okay, guys,
babe.
Guys, thank you so much. Katana, by the way, congratulations on the new business venture. You are blowing it out of the water. Oh my God, Katana Events. Holy moly.
Yes.
I am. I'm excited. I'm so happy to be
Congratulations.
finally.
You are all over the place, honey. You are just blowing it up. I mean,
I stepped out the door of gallery. Yes. I cried for 3 days straight. And I said, you know what? I'm going to put on the big girl britches. And my phone hasn't stopped since. I feel blessed and excited. I don't even know what I feel anymore. It's exciting. So thank you.
But the glow on your face and the smile on your eyes.
Oh yeah, I just
that's it right there.
It's one.
You made the right move.
But yeah, it's one of those things as an event planner that worked with you on the other side of this. I'm so glad that you came to the dark side. It's very much like Lisa Pierce. When she came to the dark side, same thing. I was like, oh my God, you're doing amazing things. And she's still doing amazing things.
Yes.
And you too. You know, this industry is
My hair story
because,
must be time.
yeah, no. But you know, the industry is blessed to have people like you to come into it because you know you come with that perspective. That just
in fact, I've called her to help me with my own situations and some weddings and stuff that I've done on the side.
And I love that.
So if I'm calling you, you're the shit. So yeah.
And then, of course, our co-host, Marcy Gutenberg with An Affair to Remember by Marcy, and our other co-host, Brooke Logan Stoner, because you're just...
Swamp Witch.
Yeah. All right.
Talking about sandwich.
Oh, my God. We will see you next Tuesday here at 2. But for now, everybody say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.